All right, everyone. It's 12:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. I want to go ahead and say thank you up front for joining us. My name is Tyler Linderman, and I am the Alliances leader here at Bricz, and then also involved in a lot of our strategy and analysis work with our customers. We're excited to have you join us for our first webinar of 2019. So we are doing a series of 4 webinars focused on the customer experience economy. This is a question that many of our customers and prospects have asked us over the past year, and we want to take some time to kind of dive in and evaluate what we've seen in the marketplace and some unique strategies that we're helping execute and discussing with our customers here. So really, we want to make sure that we set this up structured as a conversation, so not just a lecture, but a conversation. I've got 2 of my colleagues here, Ahmed Salim and PJ Spitznagel, who are going to join us as well. So we've got the ability to ask questions there on the webinar. So if you have questions that come up throughout the conversation today, feel free to type those in, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the conversation today. We've also had a few people that sent in some questions whenever they registered, so we'll get to those as well. So the other thing is these slides that we've got here today, we will be sending those out afterwards along with a recording that you can download so that you can go back and replay this again. So I'm going to turn it over to PJ Spitznagel. Can you go ahead and give an introduction, PJ?
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is PJ Spitznagel. I'm a supply chain leader here at Bricz, where I've been leading the development of our supply chain strategy and solutions for the customer experience economy.
Hi, and my name is Ahmed Salim, and I have over a decade of experience in the supply chain industry, coming with you with some design and strategy insight.
Great, thanks guys. And I did want to give a quick background on who we are, Bricz, as a company. So we are a supply chain solutions focused provider. And we were founded in 2013, a little over 5 years ago, and established our roots as software implementation and optimization team members, very, very experienced in that case. In 2017 and 2018, we grew into supply chain strategy and began working with our customers on the big picture supply chain solutions. And then as we get into 2018 and 2019, we've worked with some top retailers and some of our customers and prospects to look into emerging supply chain solutions and launching some solutions focused around the customer experience economy. That's what we're calling the economy as we move into it and as we see it going forward. So we're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, over 100 supply chain implementation experience and over 30 full-time leaders. And then some of our customers that we've worked with in various supply chain capacities you can see listed here on the screen. So everyone from retailers in the clothing world like ASOS and Jimmy Jazz and Vineyard Vines and Gap to grocery, clothing, and large goods at Home Depot as well. So we've gotten the opportunity to work through some of these solutions and quite frankly complex problems with some of the best and brightest supply chain companies in the industry. And we're looking forward to continuing that conversation with those of you here today and other companies going forward. So talking about what we're calling the customer experience economy. So we're all familiar that really Amazon has shaped and changed the way that we need to interact with our customers, right? So our first core value at Bricz is excellence in customer service. We want to provide our customers, which are you, the retailers and e-commerce providers, with the highest quality customer service. And in the same way, we want to enable our customers to provide their end customers with the highest quality of customer service as well. So as our prospects and customers were approaching us, asking this question of, hey, how do we compete with Amazon at times? How can we get closer to the customer? How can we offer quicker and cheaper delivery options without impacting our bottom line? We started taking a deeper dive into this. So here's some numbers and statistics that kind of back up what we're looking at. So on the screen here, you can see that about a quarter of consumers say that they would pay more for expedited delivery. But at the same time, over 70% of consumers are content with just getting it to them as cheaply and quickly as possible. So a recent survey of thousands of online consumers in the U.S. pointed out that the maximum delivery time the average consumer is willing to accept for an online order is only 4.5 calendar days. That's the maximum amount of time. And 75% of those respondents say that free shipping had a great impact on their purchase decision, while only 4% said it wasn't a consideration at all. So we know from these numbers that consumers, especially in an online world, they care about two things: getting the product to them quickly, and they want to experience it now, and they want it delivered to them free or as very cheaply as possible. So I'm going to kind of pose a question to PJ and Ahmed here. PJ, starting with you first, what does the customer experience economy mean to you?
So in the customer experience economy, we have the digitally native shopper who, at their fingertips, through their phone or through the internet, are able to get all the information they need, price, compare, reviews, and shipping times from online retailers, and take almost total control of their experience. And alongside of that, that drives a big factor of customer retention with a lot of these customers, because they can really get the whole end-to-end experience through the internet. Even if they don't end up buying online, a lot of times shopping experiences start online. And enormous 76% of shoppers have reported through a survey I read through Multi-Channel Merchant that it's easier than ever just to take business elsewhere, because millennials, kind of finicky, they'll have no problem due to a bad shopping experience or bad shipping experience, not return to a brand and go somewhere else, especially with bad reviews.
Yeah. Ahmed, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just take you back to the example of the gas stations. When back in the day, you would have to pay at the pump. You would have to actually go inside to pay. And when they introduced the pay at the pump model, people were hesitant to say that, hey, we get a lot of our revenue from people shopping inside the store. If we allow them to pay at the pump, maybe our revenues will go down. What they actually ended up discovering was that more people, when they offered pay at the pump, more people were coming to those gas stations, and revenues started going up when they offered convenience for the customer. So the customer experience economy is always focused on the customer, always trying to find innovative ways to serve them better with the latest and greatest technology or what have you, so that they're happier to stay shopping with them.
Yeah, so it's really about giving them as many options as possible to satisfy the need or desire that they're looking for.
Exactly.
Awesome. So the big name, and we're not going to dance around it here, right? Amazon is really what has driven this customer experience economy, right? With the introduction of Prime, I believe back in the early 2000s, they for a small yearly price, you can achieve free 2-day delivery. And even now with Amazon Prime Now, certain goods you receive free same-day delivery or free next-day delivery if you're living in certain parts of the country. So is it easy to say, or is it safe to say that Amazon is kind of alone in this world, that they're the only person that's able to do this, PJ?
Well, the estimate now is around 50% of U.S. households will have Amazon Prime. So Amazon is setting a lot of expectations with these customers. However, despite what the general message that is peddled on Wall Street, things like that, everything that Amazon does does not mean, everything is going to be taken over by Amazon. Have you ever heard of the Amazon Fire Phone? Because I haven't either.
No, I haven't.
So
tablets, yes, but not the phone.
Yes, exactly. So it's not, everything they do is not 100% successful. And really what we're seeing is competition is happening within the retailers themselves. If brick and mortar is dying, someone should ask Ulta or TJ Maxx and these companies that are rapidly opening stores. Really, it's a huge opportunity for retailers to utilize their current experience that Amazon doesn't have and still be able to compete in the customer experience economy using their brick and mortar network. The biggest competition really is yourself, and being able to innovate and introduce the systems you need to be able to really move forward and compete in the economy driven by all retailers, not just Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I want to add to that, I think it's important that we're seeing other large retailers kind of come into play here, right? Walmart has launched a vast 2-day shipping network. I know Target is executing in the same world as well. They're investing in technology to execute and get to that place. And then we also know Home Depot is investing billions of dollars in order to get closer to their customer and build out their network as well.
That's right.
So I think really it comes down to, from a supply chain standpoint, right? We're coming at it from a supply chain background. It breaks down into a few different areas that we're going to talk about today. And the first thing I want to talk about with you guys is expedited delivery. So the product is shipped out of your distribution center or store, and how long does it take to get to the customer, right? That's something that you as a retailer can't always control. So we've gotten a chance to work with some major parcel carriers like UPS. We're lucky enough to have the former CEO of FedEx Supply Chain, on our board of advisors. We've gotten a chance to speak with them as well. A lot of times we hear that they say with 2 distribution centers, you can reach 90% of the United States within 2 days. So, Ahmed, what's your opinion on that? Is that the right option? Is that a valid option? Kind of give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, it's great. If you know that two DCs are gonna serve your customers within 2 days or less, 90% of them, then maybe that's a good start. But more and more, we're seeing that it breaks down by item profile, right? Your customers are not necessarily wanting every one of your items at like expedited or delayed. It depends on the item itself. So what you'll see from the Amazon model is that they're putting urban fulfillment centers in cities, but they're not stocking every single SKU that they offer online. They're offering those SKUs that they know are fast moving and that customers would need quicker and easier access to, such as maybe toothbrushes, right? Toothbrushes come dime a dozen, you need them all the time, and therefore it makes sense to have a lot of toothbrushes everywhere rather than having them in 2 different facilities, because you're going to end up shipping them. The cost to ship is going to be exorbitant.
Yeah, PJ, do you have anything to add to that?
I do, yeah. So you have to remember that when you're doing a 2 DC network, that you're still heavily reliant on traditional parcel carriers to do that, FedEx, UPS, USPS. Especially during peak times when volumes expand, decrease, you're competing with a lot of other retailers with that volume on that system.
That's a good point.
And a lot of retailers are finding that, ones we're talking to, that despite the fact they can get within 2 days, it's much better it's more customer focused to actually have the inventory, at least within the actual metro regions you're trying to serve, and be within 1 day or 2 days, to ensure that you can reliably deliver those products to the customers without having to rely just on the carrier, FedEx, UPS, hopefully getting it there in time, and that widely expands your options. We'll see when we talk later on in the conversation of what final mile delivery options you have when you do that.
So your thought is, even with just 2 distribution centers, you're still relying on a parcel carrier to take it a large distance over the course of 2 days, and there's many variables that are outside of your control that could affect the delivery date or the delivery window and that customer experience.
And those typically are parcel carriers that do not give retailers a lot of control post-purchase to the customer over that experience. It's just a tracking number, and it kind of goes from there. So we can talk more about that later in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know from my personal experience working on this solution with various retailers, things that have come up are concepts like using dynamic parcel routing, zone skipping, and some other what I'll call unique kind of solutions there. Ahmed, do you want to kind of take a stab at explaining what those options are and kind of the pros and cons to those?
Sure. So zone skipping is a concept where if I want to deliver to UPS, if UPS is going to be my delivery option to final mile, then I could actually have UPS come with their truck to my DC and then distribute it through their network. But if I know that I have enough for an entire shipment to go all the way to the UPS hub, all the way across the country, I could actually send one directly to their hub and skip that first leg of UPS delivering it on their own. And that is called zone skipping, and there are savings in that model. And I think at the end of the day,
would you consider that a complex solution to implement, though? There's a lot of integration between transportation companies and the distribution center and other parcel carriers, right?
Because zone skipping, not all of the major, not everybody can do that. You have to have a lot of volume to be able to do that.
Enough volume to facilitate the zone.
Exactly. You're going to have enough volume that it doesn't come off the shelf with most warehouse management systems, with most parcel integration systems. So you definitely have to pay for the ability to do some of this stuff.
And it should be mentioned that typically those solutions are good for getting you within 3 days.
Yep.
At best in most of the country. When you're looking for that 2-day limit, we found that parcel skipping or zone skipping doesn't get you all the way there. It's a good interim step, but.
So that brings up a good point, a good transition. So this 2-day number has been kind of set by Amazon, right? In your opinion, is that 2-day number, is that good enough for most people, or should we be aiming for something better?
Obviously, it's heavily dependent on the retailer and their current market forces, but absolutely we'll be moving beyond 2-day very quickly.
Yep.
2-day is the standard, and retailers are looking to out-compete, and they can do that by setting a differentiating factor for the customers by moving beyond that 2-day. So next day and same day is really where the goal is for a lot of retailers, so especially if they're acquisitions of final mile carriers, and we'll talk more about how they use their stores too to help get within that range.
Yeah, absolutely. So PJ, you mentioned last mile delivery as an option for potentially cheaper shipping options to the final customer. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what last mile delivery is first, and then how that can be useful for cheaper shipping when you're closer to the customer?
So last mile delivery covers the element of getting it right to the customer's door, and typically refers to beyond just shipping something, say UPS ground, out of a central facility, and is more focused on same day, next day delivery from urbanized fulfillment centers, whether it be a store or a dedicated DC. And these carriers, or rather the service of final mile, has in the last 2 to 3 years, or really even more recently than that, has become a significant area of growth for not only just UPS and FedEx, which have national systems and they're trying to embrace this model, but newcomers to the market, more regionalized carriers that can focus on a specific region. The kind of carriers I'm talking about are like On Track, which has a Western network, or Lasership, which has an East network, which focus on a specific region. And by doing that, their rates are almost 25% cheaper on average, while being able to cover up to 85% of the U.S. and reduce time in transit because their networks are less complex.
Yep.
So there's, of course, also the crowdsourcing model, which a lot of retailers have embraced through major acquisitions. Most well-known one being Target and Deliv, I believe. Best Buy acquired Ship, and Home Depot recently acquired Roadie. And so that is a way of decreasing your fulfillment costs as well, by using the Uber net sharing economy crowdsource model to execute final mile. And in order to be able to do these, you got to make sure you have your inventory pools in the areas served by these carriers, not just a central DC.
Right, because like you mentioned, some of these regional carriers, they're specific to parts of the country, right? That's how they're able to execute so efficiently.
Yep, exactly.
So I think kind of what we're getting at of this is there's opportunity out there for retailers and e-commerce providers to hit this window, this quicker shipping window. But it should be exciting for the supply chain professionals to get a chance to really drive this customer experience from a supply chain side. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to mention is that with those new carriers and being able for supply chain to be part of the customer experience, delivery experience is very important now. There's a lot of tools or offerings out there to be able to give visibility and specific promise dates offered at the time of purchase to the customer. We've actually found that customers require or request that more than faster delivery, being able to control their delivery. So that's an important point too, and a great way for supply chain professionals to have an impact on
that customer experience.
That's
great. Thanks, guys. And the next part, what we want to talk about, and as it relates to kind of delivery of getting closer to the customer, is the network optimization piece of this. So, and PJ, Ahmed, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you. Can you walk us through, I know we've got a model here on the screen of what we're calling an old fulfillment network, kind of a typical fulfillment network. Can you walk us through what this diagram is?
Yeah. So this diagram would, if you see on your screen, the material that you're going to be selling comes through from your port DC or your vendor, and it really goes to your distribution centers. Retail, e-commerce are typically done separately, because before e-commerce existed, you had distribution centers that only distributed to your stores. With e-commerce, with the emergence of e-commerce, what a lot of companies did was open up an e-commerce DC entirely. So no matter where you were in the country, the e-commerce DC would fulfill that order, and the retail DCs would only fulfill to stores.
Yeah, so I think what we see here is that there's a very structured lane of where product can flow, and it doesn't matter whether the customer is located near the port DC or near a vendor DC, they're still receiving their product from the e-commerce DC. And so I think what we're talking about and what we want to help customers envision. And to some extent, we've seen customers in the omni-channel world, they start to move towards, okay, we're going to allow buy online, pick up in store, or fulfill in store, right? We've kind of seen people move towards that shift. But on the screen here, I've put up what we're calling an urban fulfillment network strategy. PJ, do you want to walk us through what this looks like and how it's different and offers more opportunity than the old style?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is based off of both what we are seeing our retailers begin to implement and also what our vision is for the future and taking it to the next level as far as getting inventory and being closer to the customer and having an adaptable system that responds to customer demand within a much faster amount of time than the current or the previous network we showed allowed. So while the previous network was more like this multi-echelon tiered network, this actually has the ability to move inventory along any path as seen fit to meet customer demand, whether that may be directly from the port DC straight forward to a urban fulfillment center or a store. And as well, using every node in the network and the inventory pools there to fulfill customer order, whether that's in this example, the vendor DC can fulfill an order through a drop ship. That's becoming increasingly common.
Yep.
Being able to leverage vendor inventory when it makes sense and when the transit time to customer is lower and the shipping time is lower as well. And the same goes for the port DC. We've actually seen logistics partners out of their port operations, drayage facilities that are even offering this kind of fulfillment, which is very interesting, and being able to really, use every node of the network to fulfill customers. And the big piece I do want to note here is the addition of urban fulfillment centers alongside your store network, all of which that can be used in tandem to fulfill more customer demand in a closer location, which decreases shipping costs and decreases transit time as well. And we'll look in the next couple of slides what form or shape these fulfillment centers might take place, because while they may be a dedicated DC, they may also take other forms that we're seeing retailers embrace as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a good point. So we talk about the ability to be closer to the customer, right? So if you're a store retailer, you already have locations throughout the country, right? It may be 40, 50, 60. In some cases, it may be 2, 3, 4, 500.
That's right.
Are you
the kind of network that Amazon could only dream of?
Right.
So that's
and you've already got it built out.
That's right.
It's already part of your core infrastructure. There's not necessarily a need to go build new distribution centers everywhere if you can leverage the capital that you already have.
Absolutely.
Right. So speaking of that, it is our opinion that most companies need to better use or expand their existing network. Would you guys agree with that? In order to be closer to the customer.
Absolutely. It's the first step and a big important step. You have a store network, store fulfillment. We've talked to some of our customers and they found that by pooling inventory and transiting inventory in a pool from the DC to the store and using that inventory from there to do last mile fulfillment, they have seen significant increases in efficiencies and costs by doing that.
Yeah, and when we say expand our network, we don't necessarily mean expanding physically, because expanding your network possibilities, your existing network, being able to expand what you're able to do with it.
And it's a matter of not just identifying those opportunities, but establishing the processes and technologies needed to utilize those existing assets to the best of your retailer's ability to be able to plan inventory and fulfill optimally. And that's a big step that I think we'll find as we discuss that there's some gaps in today's existing systems to be able to address those challenges.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up, PJ. And I'm going to ask the question here, utilizing a store network. We've heard that terminology with the omni-channel terminology for 5, 6, 7 years now. What about what we're talking about is different than traditional omni-channel fulfillment?
The traditional model we saw, especially with the big OMS introduction craze we saw in the last 5 to 10 years, was all about save the sale. So my inventory is not in my DC. How can I use my stores as a backup? And that's where a lot of retailers dip their toes into the omni-channel world by doing that. But now what we're seeing is retailers want to take it to the next level, and we feel that that's the right strategy as well, that using stores not just as save the sale, but as an actual established fulfillment network with inventory stocked, with safety stock ready to meet those online fulfillment demands out of those stores to decrease transit time and to decrease shipment time
So intentionally fulfilling inventory in those locations with the perception of we want to fulfill e-commerce orders with that inventory.
That's right.
Not just the excess
Reducing
inventory.
the focus on a central DC or the DC network and increasing the focus on metropolitan areas and fulfilling with inventory pooled in those areas.
I think the risk is always that, hey, how do I know that I'm going to have demand in the right place at the right time?
Absolutely.
I think that's where the missing
huge challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of times in the e-commerce world, it's hard to predict where are my online orders coming from because it's not centrally focused around a regional, my demand is not within 10-mile radius of my store.
Yeah.
It could be from anywhere online.
Yeah, talking to a lot of retailers and their existing planning, allocation, and merchandising processes and systems struggle to take that kind of additional inventory planning into account.
Y'all are trying to give a good segue. I don't want to look too far ahead, but in one of our next webinars, we're specifically going to talk about kind of breaking down that wall between the supply chain planning and the supply chain systems. But we'll get to that towards the end here. So the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about was a little bit more about this concept of urban fulfillment centers, right? So we've talked about stores as a potential option, and you hit on drop shipping from vendor DCs, but let's say, what are some other unique urban fulfillment options? And I've listed a few on the screen here. Let's talk about these for maybe a company that doesn't have many stores or doesn't have any stores. It's e-commerce only. What do some of these other opportunities look like?
So with the advent of e-commerce and final mile delivery, these options have sort of popped up in the marketplace and being used by some retailers to fulfill excess demand or excess capacity that the store network or the DC network alone can't do. A more permanent option is dark stores. This is a concept that's not been trialed too much in the United States, but it's being evaluated as just having a retail-like format, but ultimately it's not for the customer. Specific associates will use that facility to fulfill online orders and put it in a locker or deliver it straight to the customer. Pop-ups are another thing. A big example of this being used was Nike during the NBA All-Star game a couple years ago, or last year, I believe, teamed up with Snapchat and sold a special Jordan sneaker release. And they used this kind of system where they used excess commercial empty space or other warehouse space that wasn't specifically dedicated for Nike or the retailer to actually fulfill orders within 2 hours. Yeah. So that was an interesting usage of this concept, and we'd like to see it expanded, and we think it'd be a really useful concept.
Yeah, and I know sneakerheads are huge on being able to get the product in the highest quality very quickly, right? They're not one to wait for 2 weeks to get a new release, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, all right. So that kind of hits on the expanded network and getting to the urban fulfillment location piece. And we want to talk about looking a little bit forward to kind of the next webinar, just to hit on it a bit and talk about kind of the great divide of what we're talking about. So you briefly hit on merchandising and planning not being necessarily in sync with supply chain. So PJ, can you maybe just take us through a few slides here and kind of give a pre-intro to what we want to talk about in length at the next webinar?
So we showed you what the network of the future in our mind looks like and the kind of dynamic ability that network has and how the existing systems don't necessarily meet that challenge. So in order to be able to do that, there's all these departments and processes that are usually executed in silo and have their own systems, such as customer experience or supply chain or merchandising, that needs to share data and in a learning loop, learn from each other as they're fulfilling these orders based on the effects on demand that they're seeing and being able to optimize the network accordingly. So today's system is sort of like a loose aggregation of these monolithic applications. They come off the shelf, but they typically have to be customized heavily to be able to meet the demands of customers. And they're loosely integrated and in some cases talk to each other, but they really don't cooperate or really allow or facilitate for the kind of collaboration needed to really create the network of the future and plan for inventory in the optimal way based on things like information in the transportation system, carrier rates and transit times, order management data, fulfillment data that's coming out of the order management system, customer data coming out of CRM, and you have your warehouse management systems and your point of sale systems, which are on the execution level. A lot of data in there that can also be useful. Yeah. So our vision at Bricz is to move beyond that and use cloud-based applications that are integrated that can be shared between all the departments that share the data and have aligned business processes that can go through each one of these departments so they can share data, learn from each other, and be able to really go from there and plan and optimize inventory across the network, specifically focused for in-customer fulfillment and last-mile delivery.
Yeah, really breaking down those walls between departments that have typically not communicated as well as we moved into an e-commerce society.
And then creating a customer-first supply chain.
That's awesome. So yeah, so you guys will get to hear more about that in detail at the next webinar. So I want to take a minute and I want to give some quick hit questions to both PJ and Ahmed here, and then we'll jump into some of the questions that we've received from you guys in the audience as well. So real quick, in your opinion, what is the dollar price point that you would leave a shopping cart if you had to pay for shipping? For standard shipping.
Dollar price point.
Yeah,
that's an
standard
interesting
shipping,
question.
somewhere near $0.
So PJ says for standard shipping, he should never have to pay. So that's your opinion
If it's
on the
more,
economy.
if it's more than 3, 4, maybe 5 days, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I would probably be willing to pay for shipping if I really need it. But you know what? At the end of the day, if I really need something, maybe it would be worth me going out to the store to get it.
Yeah.
If it's really something I need now. So
what I really want is a window of time, and like this is going to show up on my door. It's like Amazon Prime now. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That beyond anything. I'll pay for that. I'll pay for like $5 for that.
Okay. As a consumer, are you willing to pick up product at your store or at a locker in your neighborhood for free rather than have it show up at your doorstep? What's the balancing point between you having to go get something versus having it delivered right to your doorstep?
yeah, absolutely. I think the more flexibility you add. So for example, I have a long commute home. So if I'm able to pick something on my way home, then that's great. But if, for example, I won't be taking that route because I'm going somewhere else after work, if while it's in transit, I could change that shipping destination, that would be amazing. Today's systems, I don't think, are able to react that quickly, especially in transit.
I would love to not have to spend 30 minutes in the grocery store. So it's always nicer, those kind of things where you can just walk up and everything that you wanted is in the locker ready for you.
Exactly.
That's pretty good.
Absolutely.
Experience.
All right. So I'm going to jump in. We received a few questions. One question pre-webinar. We've got a few more that have come in here. So I'm going to start. PJ, I'm going to direct this one towards you. So how do you believe an enterprise order management system needs to interact with the last mile carriers in an ideal scenario?
So this is a good point because we've done a lot of research around this, and we actually have a slide around this. And what we've seen is what an OMS really needs to do is take into account the data from a carrier management system, and even in some cases the inventory system as well, to understand the velocity of how inventory is moving through the store, especially because for store fulfillment, right? You don't want to impact the store experience and reduce inventory for walk-in customers.
Right.
So you got to take all that into account. And so this shows a good example of what the most up-to-date order management systems should or need to be able to do is evaluate all the options optimally based on the transit time, the cost, and the impacts to inventory, and based on that, be able to choose the best option.
Yeah, so you're
beyond rule-based framework, right? Needs to be able to optimally choose using all those variables I mentioned to fulfill the order.
So in your opinion, and then feel free to jump in on this as well, in your opinion, is it on the responsibility of the order management system as they're evaluating distribution options to take into account what the delivery option is for that distribution option?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you guys see that today in some of the worlds that we're living in?
It's on the roadmap. The newest versions of some of the OMS we're seeing is including that, and we've seen some also third-party integrations with OMS that can do it, but there's some progress to be done.
Yeah.
They're working on it.
Definitely. I see that as an add-on that people are getting the OMS to ping their transportation, like a logistics engine to see, okay, what should my ship via be for this order before having it sent down for fulfillment.
Right.
So it's really pulling all of that up into one application, right? So
That's
historically, and I come from a warehouse management background for the most part, but historically it's been the effort of the warehouse management system to determine the ship via and how we're going to ship stuff. So what you guys are advocating, what we as a company, Bricz, are advocating is let's move that up a level, right? And have that decision because there's greater flexibility at that.
A lot of these fulfillment decisions that are made down at the warehouse level, you almost need to be viewing your whole network as one big warehouse in a way.
Yeah, the entire country as your warehouse.
The entire country is one warehouse, and being able to dynamically make decisions based on rating as soon as you get the order in to determine where it really needs to be fulfilled to maximize the potential of your customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right, jump to the next question. So what if Amazon specifically isn't a competitor to me as a retailer? I feel no pressure from them in my marketplace. How am I affected in this economy?
Yeah, so I would say that even if Amazon isn't directly competing with you, it is impacting your customer in the sense that your customer has heightened expectations. If Amazon is in 50% of American homes in 2019, that means that if Amazon sets the bar at one day tomorrow, that your customer is not going to be happy that you're lagging behind in that regard. If your online shopping experience, if your retail in-store experience is not matching others that are able to innovate and compete and make sure that they're serving you well, then you'll just go to them, right? So Amazon sets the stage for e-com and for shipping, but there's a lot that Amazon isn't touching, so we should be aware of both sides of the equation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say if I, as a retailer or an e-commerce provider, have a plan for, hey, by 2020 we're going to try to get to 2-day shipping, or by 2021 I want to get to 2-day shipping, is that a solid plan to shoot for, or am I behind the curve already?
You know, it depends on your industry, but you may be behind the curve. I think if that's where you want to get to begin with, that's definitely a huge step, but should always be looking beyond that. How can you get to next day, especially for your highest demand, highest value products?
Yeah.
That definitely should be on the roadmap.
As a generic statement, yeah, that sounds great. 2-day shipping by 2020, 2021. You are definitely behind the curve, but I would say that at the end of the day, you need to understand your SKU profile to understand better what do you really need to get 2-day for,
Yeah.
and which items are you providing for your customer that are more sensitive to lead times than others. And that's at the end of the day, without that research on your own customer, knowing them better to understand what they want, what they don't want so quickly. Without that information, you won't be able to make a smart decision on how your supply chain should be laid out. And I think that goes back to these silos. The merchandising team and the supply chain team really need to work together in order to understand better.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And like you said, we're talking about that more in the next webinar. So that being said, we've gotten a chance to talk about a lot of great topics today, and I think we're excited about what the next webinar is going to talk about, specifically breaking down that wall between merchandising, buying, and planning, and the supply chain of the actual execution. From what we've understood working with our customers, there is a gap there. Sometimes it's a known gap, sometimes it's an unknown gap, and we really want to help our customers and talk about and have a good discussion about how to bridge that gap so that we can effectively plan well in advance with the intention of satisfying customer demand throughout the country. So that's what's on deck for the next webinar, which will be in the June timeframe, I believe. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Bricz on LinkedIn, and then also at our website, bricz.com. Feel free to connect with the three of us on LinkedIn as well, PJ Spitznagel, Tyler Linderman, Ahmed Salim. If you've got any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, we would love and be very happy to have a conversation and take some time to sit down and understand if it's something specific about your business needs, and kind of have that conversation. This is something that we as a company are passionate about. We're passionate about, like I said, excellence in customer service, and that extends to the final end customers for our clients as well. So thank you for your time, and we will talk to you in June. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
everybody.
Bye.